welcome everybody. What a great delight to have all of you here from all over the time zone, 70 time zones and so many countries. And we are delighted to have you join us for a wonderful, exciting, informative webinar. And our presenter is Dr. Belle Wheelan. But before I introduce Dr. Wheelan, I'd like to introduce you to Beverly Johns and to Carolyn Scott. And I'm going to ask Carol to share some of her demographics, and after that, ask Bev to share just some thoughts on their topic this evening, and then I will introduce Dr. Wheelan. So over to you, Carol.
Thank you. Welcome everyone from 16 time zones, 8 countries, 184 registered participants, and more sharing through the shared Zoom link. And in order to help facilitate taking registration, please sign in with your name so I can identify who's participating today. We're excited to have folks from Canada, El Salvador, Finland, Iceland, Netherlands, Mexico, the UK, and US. Whether you're getting up really early or going to bed really late, or the many places in between, we are absolutely delighted to have you joining us on this important topic. Thank you so much for your participation. This is going to be fantastic. Over to Bev.
It begins with conversations. It begins with our willingness to look within ourselves to make changes. It begins with valuing, respecting, and accepting the strengths in all of us. Thanks to all of you for your willingness to learn more and to work together. Over a month ago, one of our chapters in Illinois, Gamma Tau, began to problem solve about our part in equity. Thank you, Vinnie Hall, president of Gamma Tau. In the meantime, Liz and Carol and I were having conversations, and together decided to make this conversation happen with Dr. Wheelan. So without further ado, I turn this back to Elizabeth to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Bev. Good evening again, everybody, and welcome to our program, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. What is it and why all the fuss? It promises to be an exciting night of learning and inspiration. We were excited to learn that over 200 people have registered via Zoom to participate tonight. And it is exciting. It shows how eager you are as individuals and we are as an organization to learn more about DEI and to be able to adopt best practices for DKG. Thank you for being with us tonight. Dr. Belle S. Wheelan. I met Belle many years ago. I was surprised when thinking back that it's been 20 years since we've been together. Yet when thinking about this topic, the first person I thought about as a speaker was Belle. She's that special. And I've met many special people over the years, including many of you who are listening to me right now. Belle is not new to DKG. She presented at the DKG US Forum National Legislative Seminar, and then was the Una Temple Holden distinguished speaker at a Southeast Regional Conference. If I were to tell you about all of Belle's distinguished positions and accomplishments, I would be talking for quite a while. But Belle, forgive me. I'm going to keep this introduction short as I know everyone is eager to hear from you. Dr. Belle S. Wheelan currently serves as president of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, and is the first African-American and the first woman to serve in this capacity. Her career has included the roles of campus provost, college president, and I might add more than one college, president of more than one college, and secretary of education. In several of these roles, she was the first African-American and or woman to serve in these capacities. Belle, I was going to leave this out, but what the heck is an accomplishment that your career has spanned over 40 years. Dr. Wheelan received her bachelor's degree from Trinity University in Texas with a double major in psychology and sociology. Her master's from Louisiana State University in developmental educational psychology, and her doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin in educational administration with a special concentration in community college leadership. Belle, yeah, a lot of our DKG members have attended the executive education class at the University of Texas, and our DKG headquarters is located in Austin. She has received numerous awards and recognition, including 6 honorary degrees. I'll name just a few of these. Distinguished Graduate Awards from Trinity University and University of Texas at Austin, Washingtonian Magazine's 100 Most Powerful Women in Washington, D.C., the John Hope Franklin Award for Outstanding Leadership in Higher Education, and the Educational Testing Service Prize in Education from the League for Innovation in Community Colleges. She holds and has held leadership and membership in numerous local, state, and national organizations, including Rotary International, American Association of Community Colleges, the President's Roundtable of the National Council on Black American Affairs, and many, many more. Dr. Wheelan attributes her success to hard work, endurance, tenacity, and just being in the right place at the right time. She recognizes that prayer and support from family and friends make anything possible. She is the mother of an adult son, Reginald. It is our sheer delight to welcome Dr. Belle Wheelan. Dr. Wheelan.
My mother was a teacher in the public school system, and when back in the 50s and 60s, and when she had a separate roll book for Black students and white students. And we were in San Antonio, which had a very large Hispanic population. And at that particular point, Hispanics were considered white. So it was a very interesting time that there was not even a distinction made between Latinos and whites and Blacks. You were either Black or white at that particular point. And then the 60s came along, and James Brown told those of us who were Black that we were Black and we were proud. And so it's interesting because I often tell people my grandmother was colored, my mother was Negro, I'm Black, and my son's African American. That's how the diversity, even within one ethnic group, has occurred over my lifetime of 69 years. So if we go back further, there are probably in each one of our families or racial groups with which we identify, there's going to be a different set of terms, and they're generally defined by the politics of the time in which the term was used. But you're talking about those differences. You're talking about people who like strawberries versus those who don't. It's not just a racial or gender kind of thing. You're talking about folks with disabilities and folks who are abled. I mean, just all of the differences that exist among the people within an organization is what we're talking about when we talk about diversity. When we talk about equity, we're talking about the fair treatment of all those people, and trying to ensure that we're eliminating any barriers that might prevent people from having full participation. I lived in Lynchburg, Virginia. I was president of a community college there, and I was on the Chamber of Commerce board. I was one of 2 at the most women on that board, and they met at 7:30 in the morning. Well, I had a son that I had to get to school. They didn't have to worry about that because somebody else in their household worried about that, if they even still had small children at that time. So I told them, I said, you all can continue to start your meeting at 7:30, but I will be late because my son cannot get to before school care until 7:30. That was a barrier for me being a full participant in that particular meeting. And so they were gracious enough to change the meeting time to 8 o'clock. Sometimes you don't realize the kinds of barriers that may be there. And oftentimes people are embarrassed to bring them up. Well, the only way we can know about them, though, is if you're going to tell us about it. You know, if you have your meetings, I tell teachers all the time, especially, you have PTA meetings during the day when people are working. Parents cannot come see you for parent-teacher conferences during the day because they're working. And in many of the schools, those parents don't have transportation either. So they would have to miss a day of work. They would have to try to secure transportation And that just kind of doesn't work all the time, getting to the schools. That's why their children ride school buses, because they can't get them they can't get to work and get their children to school at the same time. So any of those barriers that get in the way and prevent everybody from having full participation in an organization is an issue. If you meet on Saturdays, that may be difficult for teachers or for members who have small children and they're taking them to soccer practice or whatever. So I don't know that you can always get rid of all the barriers, but an organization that is focused on DEI certainly tries to identify what those barriers are and to make some adjustments for them. And then when we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about then designing an environment that understands what people need in order to be valued within that organization. Being a member is one thing, but feeling included in what's going on in that organization is something very, very different. So are we okay? I just want to make sure everybody understands the terms that I'm going to be using so that we follow. We're talking about the differences among people within an organization, the way we treat those people, and then the environment that we create to make sure everybody feels valued and a part of it. When you're putting your programs together, for example, it's someone was from Canada was saying they're celebrating something about the natives there. And, when you put your programs together, you need to make sure that the programs include all kinds of celebratory kinds of things, not just Easter and Halloween and Christmas, because you're going to have religious diversity, you're going to have ethnic diversity, and so putting in Kwanzaa and putting in Yom Kippur and all of those kinds of things, or whatever it is that you're celebrating, that would show inclusion. There is a cartoon that I could not find, so I use these. Diversity is inviting people to the dance and to the party, and inclusion is inviting them to dance. That's what this slide is designed to show you, okay? So you can be a part of an organization or a member, but not feel a part of it. You'd be standing along the wall all the time watching everybody else as they're out on the dance floor or as they're up on the stage or whatever, if you don't feel included. So diversity means that, everybody's been invited to be there, but inclusion means that they're actually a part of and valued within that organization. What are the benefits of diversity? Well, first of all, you get a whole new set of perspectives coming to you. People have different experiences. All of us have grown up in a different household and a different part of the world, and we have different values, and we have different celebrations, and we have different philosophies and different ideas. So when you bring a more diverse group of people into the organization, you get different perspectives. One of the things that I always tell folks, because again, growing up in the 60s and 70s, and it provided me an opportunity to be the first either woman or minority in many of the positions in which I held. But I always made sure to tell them, I ain't speaking for all Black people. Okay, I can bring you my perspective as an African-American woman, but please don't take that, as gospel for every African-American or every woman that you'll ever encounter. But I can bring some new ideas, like bringing to the chamber that, being there at 7:30 in the morning is a problem for me because I have a child. They hadn't thought about that, because all of them were businessmen who were accustomed to, leaving home after breakfast and going right to work. It also gives you a wider pool from which to choose for your members. Many chapters oftentimes struggle to get members in their organization because they're not just DKG, but any organization, because they're limited to the folks they know. In the 60s, the favorite phrase was, I don't know any, when you're talking about inviting minorities into your organization. Well, everybody knows one. So, call upon that one and say, hey, I need some people who have other ideas. Who do you know? Don't be embarrassed to do that, because DEI mandates a sense of intentionality. You can't hope that DEI is going to happen in your organization. You can't wish that it would happen. You have to intentionally do things to make it happen. So if there is a key word to ensure diversity, equity, inclusion, it's intentionality. So you may have to walk up to someone you have never met before, but who works in your same school and say, I belong to this organization and I think we would benefit from your perspective. Not they would, benefit from you, because they probably would. But the reality is, if you're looking at it from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, it's the organization that's going to benefit from having that diversity come forward. You also end up with increased innovation. If you stay in an organization long enough, you kind of do the same events over and over again, and you struggle for what's the theme going to be this year, or are we going to sell apple pies or pumpkin pies this year? I mean, it's one or the other. But when you have an increased diverse population in your organization, you get a whole bunch of other ideas that perhaps you had never thought of before, because you hadn't done it. Hey, let's have a tamale sale. I grew up in San Antonio, so I love tamales. I was there in June and ate a whole dozen all by myself. I'm embarrassed to say, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. But I'm just saying, you get a new set of ideas and innovations that you can do in your organization when you have that diversity there. There are also better interactions among the members, because you find new things about which to talk. You find new experiences to share. And so it helps you if you have a diverse membership and you feel comfortable communicating with that diverse group of people in your organization. When you get out into the real world and you go to a meeting of some sort that's made up of people not necessarily from your organization, then you feel more comfortable around them. There is, in the African American community, there's this feeling that anytime an African American man gets on an elevator, for example, women, all, whether they're black, white, green, or brown, automatically hold their purse close to them because they think they're going to get mugged, even if he's wearing a three-piece suit. There's just that thinking. Well, once you get to know several African American men, then you know that they're not all alike, and you can break those stereotypes. So if you have that diversity within your organization, it does help get rid of stereotypes in the rest of your life. I worked in Portsmouth, Virginia. I was provost of a campus of a college, and I had a party in December to celebrate the Christmas holidays, and I invited the folks on the campus. We had about 200 people, and I figured, 90 of them would show up. And they're walking through my house, and I heard conversations like, she's got a piano, and look at that artwork, isn't it beautiful? And I swear I wanted to say, and I have flush toilets too. But I realized that for many of them, it was the first time they had ever been in the home of an African American. And they really didn't know what to expect. And so there was a level of comfort that there were things in my home with which they could identify to make them feel more comfortable being there. And so there is that better interaction. It also creates an increase in fundraising opportunities. You have more people to pay dues and contribute to whatever fundraisers you're having, and they then have a social group that they can go and ask for money and contributions to the fundraisers, and so it's a financial benefit as well when you increase the size of the organization and the diversity of it. Okay. There are some challenges of diversity, of a diverse organization, though. One of them is that it may necessitate a realignment of your organizational mission. I don't know that that's true for Delta Kappa Gamma because you are focused on education, whatever that is, but you may have parts of your strategic plan that you might expand as a result of new ideas that are being brought to you from the diversity that's coming now into your organization. You may decide, I know right now there is, on the college level, there is a great concern about the decrease in the number of African-American men going to college, in the number of men, period, going to college. And so bringing in that diversity in your organization may cause you to have to realign either your mission or at least the activities in which you're participating. There is an implementation of organizational goals that you may have to put in or to change so that you can say, regarding membership, for example, that we're going to intentionally increase our membership into 3 countries. I don't know how many countries you're in now. Right now, you said that there are 8 countries that are registered here. There are many more than 8 countries around the world. So one of your organizational goals might be to expand your membership into 3 other international countries. I don't know, but those are the kinds of ideas that tend to come forward when you have a diverse membership. It also provides open conversations and training opportunities that you're going to have to do, like this one, to help people understand why you want to intentionally focus on the changing the face of DKG. There are human biases that we all have, and we may have to have some honest conversations as we're considering new members in the organization. Do we want any more Catholics, or do we want any more Protestants, or do we want any more short people, or whatever it is? And those are real conversations that we need to have. The politics of this world, are such that for 20 years, perhaps we wanted Afghanistani women in our organization, and now with the Taliban coming, it may not be possible. All of those kinds of things will also impact what it is that you're doing, because the members that are coming to you live in those societies. And so you have to adjust sometimes your programming, your thinking, your membership strategies, whatever, based on that part of the world in which they live. And then you may have some members who quit. Because they don't want to be part of a diverse or an intentionally diverse organization. I was a member of Rotary International. I joined the 2nd year after they were taking in women, which was late 90s. And when I moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, Lynchburg is a very small conservative town in Virginia. At the time, Jerry Falwell, who was an big-time evangelical minister, was president of the university right across the street from which I was president at the community college. And the college had never had a woman president. It had never had a minority administrator. And here, and I'm Catholic, big mouth, Black woman coming in here, gonna be seen and heard. And so these folks are going, oh my God, who is this? And why are you here? And what were they thinking when they brought you here? So when I transferred, I went into Rotary down in Portsmouth, which was more progressive. So when I went to Lynchburg, people are going, oh my God, we're going to take her into Rotary. She's already a Rotarian. Before I left, I was president of the Rotary Club in Lynchburg, Virginia. That's not an easy thing to do. And when the membership chair called me to ask me if I would allow my name to be put into the hopper for president, I said, yeah, but how many people do you think will quit? And he was quiet for a moment, and he says, well, there may be some, but we've had Black members for a long time. I said, that was not my issue. No, he says, it's time we have a female president. I said, that wasn't my issue, because Lynchburg, was still very much a Black-white community, and they had never had a Black president before. And so you may get resistance from some members who just don't feel that they can, raise themselves to the level of being that accepting. That is one of the challenges of change, period. Whether it's because they don't want, short people and they're tall, or vice versa, or, they don't want anybody from the East Coast because they're from the West Coast, or, whatever the reason is. As I said, we all have our biases, and sometimes it's just tough for us to change. So why is there this big brouhaha on DEI? I mean, why are we suddenly focusing on this again? This was a big thing in the 1960s here in this country. And we thought we had made some progress. And now with Black Lives Matter and, all of the turmoil that we've had in our country, what's with the fuss? Well, because we do have changing demographics. Most institutions of higher education are majority female now. When I was in college 50 years ago, we went to find a husband. And my grandmother was very disappointed because my mother went to Fisk University in Nashville, which was right across the street from Meharry Medical College, and she didn't come home with a doctor for her husband. She said, "Why do you think I sent you there?" Well, that's, kind of tough to do sometimes now when you only have one gender, but we are becoming more female dominated in our college classes. Now, that's going to have a ripple effect because 10 years from now, when they're moving, or 5 years from now, even when they're moving into professorships and teachers and principals jobs, then you're going to have more women from which to choose. And then you're going to be looking for men somehow to be able to fill those positions. But that is true. And also in this country, our demographics have changed such that minorities are the majority now. And so you're seeing on the college level anyway, because my organization accredits colleges and universities, I'm much more familiar with them. But the birth rate has changed such that there's like 17 Latinos for every one adult nowadays, which means we're going to have many more Latinos in school than we have had. It's about, 8 to 1 with African Americans, and it's still 1 to 1 with whites. And so in our country, the minorities are becoming the majority. Higher education has not always been an option for minority communities. Many more of them are first generation college going students than in other, in the white race. And so it's causing faculty to have to change the way they teach to accommodate students who didn't go through that college prep track in K-12, but who are on the doorsteps of the colleges now and saying, "Okay, I'm here, what you gonna do with me?" So that's just that part of the reason for doing that. But those are two big things that are impacting, in this country. In other parts of the world, they may be the same demographics. It may be an economic phenomenon that's causing it. It may be a geographic part that's causing it. It may be, economics. I don't know, but there are changes in our ecosystem that are causing us to be concerned. In this country, we are more concerned now because we're going to lose positional power if we don't educate students, that are coming to us in the same way and at the same high levels that we did historically. And it's going to be different. We're not going to be able to. You can see this with the careers that people. We lost 650,000 people in this country because of COVID. So that's a whole big chunk out of the workforce. Then you've got the retirement age folks who are also deciding, well, fine, I was close enough, I'm not going back anymore. So what are we going to do to fill those positions? Well, you can't depend upon the same groups that you had before coming in. You're going to have to convince more women than ever before to move into what had been male-dominated professions. You're going to have to talk those men that are still out there into some of those traditionally female professions in order for us to continue to move forward. They got 50 tankers sitting out in different parts of the water that can't deliver goods because they don't have enough truckers to unload them and move them, across the country. All of those kinds of things are impacting what we do, and DKG is no different. So what then do we do to achieve the goals that we have? Well, the first is, like we're doing today, hold conversations or workshops to discuss the goals for DEI in an organization. You all have taken that first step with your executive committee anyway, talking about that. Some of your members are, as Elizabeth or Bev mentioned, are already talking about it. And so this nexus has occurred. So talking about it is one thing, but now what are we going to do? You need to actively establish some goals for the program committee to include activities that demonstrate that commitment to it. You may have to also set some goals for membership, and how are you going to actively recruit a diverse membership? Invite those you'd like to include to talk about those goals and glean their interest. Being honest with folks, here's another example. And this may not be easy, but I'm not suggesting that any of this is easy, but I think it's intentional. I taught psychology for 10 years, and I had a colleague who taught reading. She was, I was in San Antonio, she's from like Alabama, and she came to me very frustrated because she had an African-American student who was just ignoring her. She wouldn't pay attention to her. She, didn't do her homework and stuff. And she was very frustrated and asked me what she could do. And I said, well, you're probably the first white woman who has ever showed an interest in her. And she doesn't believe you for real, quite honestly. So I would go back and say, I'm probably the first white woman that's ever shown an interest in you, but I want you to know that I'm really sincere. My job is to help you learn. And when you decide to accept that, let me know and we can move forward. And so 2 weeks later, I came to the office and I had some yellow roses on my desk from her saying thank you, because that's exactly what happened. Sometimes you have to confront this animal and say, I don't know you, but I'd like to get to know you. And I feel that you have value and that you can add value to our organization. May I sit down with you and tell you about the organization and see if you're interested? Somebody's going to have to be the ones, not just the one, but the ones to step out on faith and make that approach. And then continue to talk about commitment and turn that commitment into action as far as the organization is concerned. Okay? Let's stop for some questions.
How can we attract younger members to our organization? We're all aging.
Seasoned, yes.
All right, seasoned.
I think if you are still working or have members who are, there are certainly a lot of young people who are in your organization. If you have a dues structure, though, it may be that it's tough for them to afford your dues. So one of the things you might do is to put in a sliding scale that says, for first year teachers or your first 5 years, you would only pay this much. And then after that, you would pay some more. That would be one thing. You have to remember, we talked about the environment and everybody feeling welcomed and valued. If they see that it's only for retirees who have lots of time and lots of money because they're retired pulling down retirement, they're not going to feel like it's an organization for them. So the hardest part will be getting the first 3 or 4 into your chapter. After that, then they can help with the responsibility of bringing in some of their peers. It won't fall on your shoulders so much anymore. Not that you can give it up totally, but you've got some help in pulling them in at that particular point. Again, the programming that you bring in, if it's programming that appeals to the younger generation, then they'll be more likely to come in. If it's stuff that, they feel like they want to do, packing book bags over the summer to make sure that all the students have supplies when they're coming back. That's something that you see younger folks feeling comfortable doing. Those of us who are seasoned, I'll give you money and you can go buy it, but to stand out in the parking lot and pass them out is not what I want to do. I'm beyond that one. So, division of labor sometimes has to do with that as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Here's how can local chapters who understand this and value DEI impact the state and international to make the changes necessary and to put their clout behind such a movement to publicly show commitment is a question that came into the chat. I don't know your structure, but I think if local chapters have activities and have a plan to do this, surely at your state and regional and national and international meetings, you can highlight those programs. to show the others what it is that you're doing. If you have a newsletter that you share with others, highlighting those programs in that newsletter will often, do that. Having these kinds of Zoom calls with other chapters within a state so that the whole state moves forward, or at least a part of the region within the state. It's a conversation to have, and it's an information sharing session. And so you have to start small and grow big, or you'll be frustrated if you try to start big first.
Mhm, mhm.
National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is today in Canada. The day honors First Nations. How do you say that? Inuit? That's French. I don't speak those. Those lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families and communities. Super. I knew you were celebrating something because I heard you talk about it earlier. That would be great if the chapter is recognizing them as well. That's a step in at least introducing those particular populations to you, and then you to those particular populations and what they do. So that's an informational exchange which would be wonderful. I'd be interested to know if any of the folks out there have already started doing intentionally diversifying their chapters. You have to unmute yourself before you can talk, so don't forget that.
I'm from Alpha Nu in Virginia, and we have been intentionally looking at this. I was on a committee for the state where we wrote a marketing plan, and the core of that marketing plan was to do exactly what you said, to widen the pool. Right now, we are, it is something that's intentional with our group, so I definitely agree with that. Right now, I'm on the nominating committee for the state, and we are doing exactly what you said. We're reaching out to the chapters across Virginia to have conversations to make them understand that the future for the organization lies in their being able to have a membership that represents the not only just the age span, but the population that's out there.
Sure.
So we are intentionally doing it and trying to influence, use whatever influence we have at the state level to get them to put the clout. Our new president appears to be willing to do this. So, we are feeling good about the fact that there probably is going to be some help from that level.
Okay.
I can share an example from Illinois.
Good.
We were very fortunate that we had scholarship money that was bequeathed to us by one of our members who died at 103.
Oh, wow.
So what we decided to do was to target an at-risk school district, which was predominantly Latino and African-American outside the outskirts of Chicago, and do a competitive scholarship for women who wanted to receive a master's degree, but didn't have the funds to do that. And so as a result of this scholarship money, we were able to identify through a competitive process 13 women to get a master's degree from a university who were predominantly representing Latino and African-American teachers. And as a result of that, now they have become, the majority of them have become our members of our chapter, and
Excellent.
hopefully they are going to recruit within their school district. And I think for us, I think, or at least, when you're talking a lot about inclusion and the whole idea of intentionality, I think intentionality also has to do with affiliation. And culture and affiliation is very, very important. And so I think affiliation into a chapter can only happen when you feel that you are not isolated and that you do have that respect and appreciation and empowerment to share what it is that you do that's different from the rest of the chapter. So I think that's the next step. So we get these young women now who are members of our chapter, but we need to figure out ways to empower them through programs that not only, celebrate who they are, but also the wonderful work that they're doing for diverse students in school districts that are in very, very desperate straits.
That's wonderful. Another thing you might do is if you have a program monthly or at your meetings where you highlight, a scholar or a teacher who's doing great in your particular school division. If they don't have to have won an award necessarily, but they've raised the reading levels, of their children, or they've, whatever accomplishments they've done, they've haven't gotten in a fight with the principal in 3 months. I mean, whatever it is that they're doing, to bring them in as your program for the month. And then after, they've been there, then to invite them to join the group also. That's another thing. Giving people that opportunity to shine is what you did when you gave them the scholarships. And then they were able to come back and say, not only thank you, but, that was a good thing you did. And I want to be a part of that organization. Yeah.
So far, so good.
Okay. Hilda, just speak up. I can't see you.
Yeah, I know. Well, anyway, what I want to say about our state, Jalisco in Mexico, we are on the western side of Mexico, is that most of the states in Mexico have only 1 or 2 chapters. I think we're really short in relation to the number of chapters everywhere. And what is happening is that it is not so easy, because in my chapter we are all retired, and we have only 3 or 4 teachers that are still working. So what we need to have is like ideas, and we always do that, ideas for retired teachers, which is human development. We need to work under moral issues, or we have to work on physical education in relation to how to do exercises, and also literature, history, something that are really attracting those that are retired. However, the young ones are still needing something else. And we need to get into the field of education in relation to design programs that are both good for the ones that are retired and also good for the ones that are still working, and some of the new ones who are also working, and we do not have money to get into scholarships, which is also very bad, but we don't have the money. And my personal issue, is that they need to know why they are paying $40 every year, because it's high for us here. And what do I get from DKG? And that is something that is very important to me, to explain what is that, why we belong to DKG, and at the same time, what do we get? And it's sometimes difficult to explain to the new ones what exactly they get from DKG. The language, first of all, is one of the opposites. So that's some kind of my personal issues.
Hilda, I don't think it has to be developing programs either for young folks or for seasoned folks. I think a good program is going to have something that will attract everybody, at different times and different reasons. This is not the same example by any means, but when I was in Rotary, I was program chair. And so they would sing songs, at the beginning of every meeting, and they would always do America the Beautiful and something else. And I love those songs, but every week, I mean, can we be a little more creative? So the membership ranged in age from like 35 to 85. And so what I did was I picked different songs. I had, Glenda, I see your hand. Different songs. I picked B.B. King songs and Chuck Berry songs and Tennessee Ernie Ford songs and military songs. And at first they're going, who put you in charge of this? But then it got to be, what are we going to sing today? So, you have to start and do something that may be really out of the ordinary. You may get a young PE teacher to come and teach you all how to do exercises from your chair. And that may excite that teacher enough to come back and want to be a member. That's the kind of exchange that you have. You get something from them, but then you can give them something back. But I agree with you that you need to have an elevator speech where you can say, here are the advantages and the reasons for joining. Glenda?
Yes, I'm a Rotarian also. And one of the ideas that I have, I'm trying to develop, being immediate past president of West Virginia State means I don't have to deal with all the gritty of every day. My mind is going and creatively thinking of things to do. One of the things I'm exploring are DKG interest groups, and that's based on something that Rotary does in fellowship groups. I'm going to be trying to get people maybe that want to do a movie night, maybe that want to do a craft thing, or maybe want to do a baking, but they're an interest group, and try to connect these people within my chapter to make some relationships with 3 or 4 people. And then you have them when they come, they're sort of a already relationship bound community, because we all know you bring one in, they don't bond, they don't come in. So that was one of the things that I was thinking of. The other thing I'm thinking of, and I've already booked, I live in Glade Springs here, which has like next door, a neighborhood thing where you can put out. I'm going to try to get an inventory or a database of all the people in next door who moved from all over the country, who may have already been in DKG or who want to join DKG. And I'm going to have a luncheon for some of my own members and a self-host luncheon at the resort here where I live for possibly new people that might be interested in joining DKG from Tennessee, from Illinois, from wherever they moved in to Glade Springs. So those are some ideas I'm playing with. And I really believe this diversity, equity, and inclusion. And sadly to say, we have one African-American woman in our chapter, and I'm going to work with her to try to bring in some other people too. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
That's great.
Good ideas.
Anybody else?
I'd like to suggest that with the seasoned members, there's a lot of institutional knowledge. And I really think that the organizations have to be kind of like, I don't know, Overeaters Anonymous or Bill Ken, whatever that thing is for people who are addicted to alcohol, that we are the problem solvers. People need to come to us because we have already lived it. And I can see that there's great value in being able to use these old heads and these old experiences to really support our communities. So I wish we were mentoring, someone said, whatever it is, that we were open to support and help troubleshoot, be detectives, be consultants, be social workers, so to speak.
One of the things that I substituted out when I was in college many years ago, and it would have been nice to have had a mentor, to help me navigate the scene, even though I hadn't planned to be a full-time teacher, just even then. So those of you who are seasoned and or retired, might get new members by finding out who are the new teachers in the school closest to your house or closest to the club or, somewhere, and then go in and just say, boy, do I have an opportunity for you. Okay, here's a bunch of old heads, who have done it and lived it and stuff. And here's how we got through it. How about coming over and let's go have some tea or coffee or meet at Starbucks or, Food Lion or wherever you're going to go. And let's talk about helping you survive, because there is a very high attrition rate, both in K-12 and at the college level in the first 3 years of teaching. We even in our colleges of education, you can't teach everyday classroom management in a book from a book. You've got to live that. And one semester of student teaching is not going to necessarily get you through. And for college professors, you don't even have that opportunity. You just go and do it. So that might be another way to get new members too, is to go find those brand new teachers who don't realize they can benefit from what you have to offer, or don't even know that you're there to know that, they can have someone on whom to fall back.
So, Bill, question that, has been asked of, when you are in an organization that you recognize there are some exclusionary practices, if somebody approaches it, they may be the lone voice and they have the intentionality to bring it to the attention, and how can we turn that around? So what are some examples of that you've recognized out there, through your lens, of exclusionary practices that become a part of the culture?
I'll have
And
to
the
think.
second question is, how do you fix it?
Yeah.
How do you change it?
I personally have always been one of those kinds of folks that if I see an issue, I'll raise the question. You can tell me, we don't, that's not on our agenda, or, this is not the right time, or I hadn't thought about that. Or more often than not, the person who comes up with the idea is going to be the one who's taxed with making it happen. And so that's pretty much why people don't ask those questions, because they don't want to have to be the one to lead the charge. But I think if the first time that question is asked is going to be the most difficult, and the response that the person gets to asking that question is going to determine whether anybody else ever asks a question or not.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to step out there on faith. And even if you approach it and say, this may be the most harebrained idea we've heard today, it may not be something in which you're interested, but it's a question that I feel the need to raise. So bear with me for a second, and hear me out. And then just put it out there. We don't have any recent college graduates in our chapter. Does that bother anybody beside me? We have a bunch of seasoned folks with lots of war stories, but we don't have anybody to tell those war stories who will learn from them or will care one way or another. So is it just me, or do you think it would be viable to try to recruit some younger members? I mean, you have to broach it in a way that's not going to offend anybody, but also getting them thinking about, here's an idea. What would be the value for us? It would increase membership. It would give us more people to do the work. It would bring in more money to the budget. You see what I'm saying? You just have to step out there. And the first time it's asked, is important. I'm full of stories. Like I said, I taught psychology and was teaching child psychology, and we were talking about the advantages of breastfeeding versus bottle feeding, and how the antibodies pass from mother to baby to protect the baby, and you learn to bond with your baby because we haven't found a way to detach a breast yet. And I had a young woman ask me if Black women had chocolate milk in their breast.
Oh, jeez.
And it was interesting because about a third of the class fell out laughing. They thought that was the most hysterical thing they had ever heard. Another third sat there in shock, like, no, she didn't ask that question. But there was another third that you could see pensively trying to figure out the possibilities of that happening. And I realized at that moment that the way I answered that question was going to determine whether anybody else felt comfortable enough to ask what was obviously one of the most ridiculous questions in the universe. So after the laughter died down, I said, that's probably the most interesting question I've been asked as a teacher so far. But to the best of my knowledge, there are no flavoring packets in Black women's breasts, that all breast milk is the same. And so it's the way you respond to the question that's asked as well that will determine the openness of the conversation, and the receptivity of a new idea. And sometimes, you have to have some self awareness as well. If you, like I, always have something to say about something, you might not want to be the person to ask that question. You may want to plant that question into somebody else who is respected, and that to whom people will listen, rather than ask it yourself. I mean, that's just part of being real, or if you're a very shy person, which I can't identify with that one at all. But if you are an introvert and a very shy person, you may not feel comfortable asking that question. So send a note to the chapter president and say, here's an idea I have, but I wasn't comfortable raising it to everybody else. And again, the way that's, if the president comes back and say, we had, Belle came up here and sent me this message because she was too shy to ask. That's not the way that you're going to get people involved, to put them, to put them on blast like that. But to say, here's an idea one of our members came up with that I wanted to bring to you. So those personal interactions are the best way to make those changes happen. Sorry, I was reading Lenore's statement. She said, I always ask my infants, do you want mashed potatoes or chocolate milk, depending on right or left breast? That's priceless. Oh. Other questions or comments? I'd love to hear from some of the folks outside of the United States and Mexico to see what's going on in the rest of the world. We accredit institutions in Mexico, so and growing up in Texas, I feel like I'm more familiar with them, but the Netherlands, and where else are people from out there? Maybe they're the ones who are asleep. I don't know the time zone difference. No?
I'm Lenore from Vancouver Island. That just made you laugh.
Thank you.
And I'm wearing my orange shirt for Orange Shirt Day because we've been thinking of all the Indigenous people in our country that are suffering and trying to have the settlers communities understand the truth before they actually work on reconciliation. And as far as getting Indigenous membership, I've tried over the years to get teachers from our tribal school interested in. And 3 or 4 years ago, I thought we had someone who was really interested, and she gave a great presentation and came to one of our meetings as well. But then, as luck would have it, she moved to the mainland and got a job with the provincial government to actually go into other First Nations community to help them recapture the language and the right way to do it and so on. So I'm a little bit stuck at the moment on how to reactivate that kind of thing, because you have to wait till COVID numbers are down.
Yeah, COVID has put a damper on everything. You might ask that woman, however, if she knew anybody that she could will to Delta Kappa Gamma to take her place.
Yeah.
Because she may have those contacts and can give you names of women, who might be interested that you would not otherwise know. I wouldn't just let it go, try to see if she doesn't have a few. But yeah, COVID is rough, I'm telling you. Oh, that's cool. Barbara Parks Lee is writing a book. Good for you. Well, Elizabeth, I'm not one to hold a meeting if everything has been accomplished at that meeting. So if there,
Yeah, I was just looking at my email because we asked people to send a question. I think Bev and Carol got some questions through email because we asked people ahead of time.
okay,
Because they have. So I apologize if my head was down. I was checking.
that's all right.
Because I agree with you. If we have accomplished all our goals and outcomes, we can, close out. But just give me a second here, to try to find it quickly.
I was frustrated that I couldn't see people, so I'm glad I remembered to stop sharing my screen. So
Absolutely. So
been a long day. I'm sorry.
so let's see. I don't know. Carol and Bev, you had sent me some questions that you all received, and we should have had them up.
There was one that dealt with the whole notion of equity and how would a chapter start to address the equity in their chapter.
Oh, right. I do remember seeing that. I apologize. I should.
Well, again, the equity comes from making people feel that there's a reason for them to be there. Okay. The diversity is getting them all there. The equity is making sure that there's something for everybody. And then the inclusion is to feel value while you're there. So I think your programming is going to be the best way to do that, to make sure that, like that Rotary Club, you have different music, at every event, but that you have different programming that would cater, that would focus specifically on a given group, whether it's recruitment of African-American males back into school, or stopping the dropout programs, or, I'm grasping at straws here, but, something that you might not ordinarily do, but that would give you visibility in a different community that would then get folks from that community interested in what you have to offer.
Mm-hmm. I know, Belle, another question was that, I think Shirley had alluded to, that we had, talked to Northern Virginia. And one of the questions that came through, because we invited all those folks who was on that Let's Talk session, was the idea that a lot of organizations, or, because we're a trade association
Right.
tax thing, is when do they decide that they write a statement about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because I think Bev received the question from a collegial, or maybe it was someone else saying, "Oh, well, what is DKG's stand on equity?"
Yeah.
And you probably familiar with that because of being in the collegiate, environment.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like Nike would say, just do it. When I first came to the commission, we began in 1895. So we've been around a long time. And when I came 17 years ago, I was the first woman and the first minority to be president of this organization. So it took us a while to think about diversity. We did not have such a statement. And I was not walking in the door suddenly advocating for minorities, because then they would go, uh-oh, what did we hire when we hired this woman? I waited 2 years until I asked my board, do we value diversity? Now, remember, we do public and private institutions, 2-year and 4-year, all of them, but nowhere did we actually say that we valued diversity. And so they said, of course we do. And I said, but we don't say it anyway. So we developed a position paper on diversity.
Oh, okay.
This was 15 years ago. Last year, we talked about how do we encourage our institutions to operationalize diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we now have a position statement on that one. So you just have to do it. You have to step out. You can be the first one in your state, the first one in your country. You just have to step, or at the international level, if the big kahunas can come up with one for the entire organization, it makes it easier for the chapters to do it. because you can, say that this is our organizational focus. And so we're taking advantage of that. Barbara has her hand up.
Right.
I was going to try to say your name, but I got to Barbara Rodriguez, Del Rocio. Yeah. What were you trying to say, Barbara? You had your hand up.
Okay, yeah, it's just I professor, a college professor here
Okay.
in Puebla, Mexico. So in this case, the best way to invite young women to DKG for us is not just telling them about what they can get from DKG, but the opposite.
What they can bring.
It's the opposite.
They
Right.
bring.
We need to tell them that we have to go the extra mile. That is the point. Go the extra mile.
Sure.
Get, get transcendency. It's
Excellent.
not just getting something, it's giving something. And not just giving away whatever, it's just giving your heart. It's living your heart heritage. It's living a heritage. This is DKG. I know, and I have had wonderful experiences. I have Kathy Swansing, who is my sister. I have Tony Cook, who is my sister. Carol Scott, Hilda Diaz.
Nice.
You are my sisters. Elizabeth Tanner. I mean, I've been in a terrible situations, and they have been with me. That is transcendency. That is heritage. That is heart. And
Yep.
that's exactly what I'm showing to these young women. That I can go in the golden gift and receive a beautiful speech from Tony Cook, who says, my sister is with me, with Katie, and I'm going to practice my Spanish. I mean,
Yep.
this is heritage, this is heart.
Yep.
So that is the best, for me, that is the best way to invite somebody.
Excellent.
You
Thank
know,
you for
if you give, you will receive. That is in the Bible.
Yep.
That is in the Bible. Whatever you give, you will receive.
Mhm.
Give your heart and they will give you your heart. Give your time and it's going to be the same.
Thank you for sharing that, Barbara.
Yeah.
That's on point. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any other questions or things that you would like to share? Other than we have quite a few notes in here, and I think we have the
I'm-
questions answered I received.
I'm hopeful that it will be easier in 2021 to pull this off than it was in 1968. If for no other reason than I'm looking around the screen and there's already diversity represented here. So while it's not just the responsibility of those who are bringing that diversity to increase it in that chapter, it does help to have some members there because it gives credibility to the organization, with the population you're trying to recruit. So
Yeah.
I wish you all much success in doing that. I thank you for the invitation. This was
Thank you.
thought-provoking for me as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. We definitely will be in touch. And I think when we always talk about what do we want to take away, we have a lot of takeaways and we've recorded it. We've got the chat we can copy for these great ideas. But for me, I think the next step would be to get us together again and all of us have a conversation about what are things we can do, based on what you've shared, to say, how can we look at and diversity, equity and inclusion, but also there's a big B out there now, DEIB, starting to come forth with belonging that Belle has so, eloquently shared with us about this sense of how do we belong, and also standing up, to have that courageous conversation, about wanting to go forward. So Belle, let's not wait another 20 years.
Right, that's right. We don't.
I
wanna-
promise.
And if you're all in Georgia, we better give Belle going as a member of our organization. Here are the Georgia folks here other than Belle, okay? And I will see to that. But thank you, and thank you all. And it's just been a sheer delight. And Carol and
Yes,
Bev, would you like to say any closing comments?
Again, I am just delighted that so many of you are willing to participate in these conversations so that we can all move forward. I am most appreciative that Gamma Tall and Vinnie Hall, who is the new president of that chapter, brought it forward. And then that caused another conversation to take place with Elizabeth and Carol. So we have to keep having these wonderful conversations because that's how we all grow as an organization.
Hey, Carol?
Yes, it's amazing having so many show up. Wonderful for the registration. This time we've had more active participation coming in throughout the webinar today. We started out with 67. We ended up with a total of 108 attending actively. That tells me this is very important, and we finally found a format to really get this out and discuss it. So thank you, all of you, for whether you're here in your pajamas from early or late, or you just got home from work.
Right.
We are so happy to have you here. Again, countries who showed up today, many people from countries, but Canada, El Salvador, Iceland, Finland, Netherlands, you all got up really early.
Wow.
Mexico, the US, it's phenomenal, but this is a worldwide concern, and not just the organization, but the world itself. We all need this healing, and
Right.
thank you for your interest and dedication to getting this moving.
Just a quick comment. We're getting asked quite a bit about the recording. So Bev, I think you said we could possibly place it on your YouTube
Put it
channel.
on our YouTube channel.
And then we'll send that link and we'll follow up with you, just if you have additional ideas for how to move forward on this issue, to create what we call a community of practice, a cohort group, just to get started out there, because we all heard the same information tonight and we're all sharing the same concerns. Thank you to the chapter and the folks, who contributed ideas and other things along the way. So thank you, Belle, and
My pleasure.
Be in touch. It was wonderful.
You all.
Good night, everybody.
All.
Bye.
Yeah.